Hello, my name is Lisa Jett, and I'll be telling you the story of Jorinda and Jorindel by the Brothers Grimm. There was once an old castle that stood in the middle of a deep, gloomy wood, and in the castle lived an old fairy. Now, this fairy could take any shape she pleased. All day long, she flew about in the form of an owl, crept about like a cat, but at night she always became an old woman again. When any young man came within 100 paces of her castle, he became quite fixed and could not move a step till she came set him free. But when any pretty maiden came within that space, she was changed into a bird, and the fairy put her into a cage and hung her up in a chamber in the castle. There were 700 of these cages hanging in the castle, and all with beautiful birds in them. Now there was once a maiden whose name was Jorinda. She was prettier than all the pretty girls that ever were seen before. A shepherd lad whose name was Jorindel was very fond of her, and they were soon to be married. One day they went to walk in the wood, and Jorindel said, "We must take care that we don't go too near to the fairy's castle." It was a beautiful evening. The last rays of the setting sun shone bright through the long stems of the trees upon the green underwood beneath, and turtle doves sang from the tall birches. Jordan sat down, gazed upon the sun, and Jordan sat by her side. Both felt sad. They knew not why, but it seemed as if they were to be parted from one another forever. They had wandered a long way, and when they looked to see which way they should go home, found themselves at a loss to know what path to take. The sun was setting fast. Jordan now suddenly looked behind him, and saw through the bushes that they had, without knowing it, sat down close under the old walls of the castle, shrank for fear, turned pale and trembled. Jordan was singing when her song stopped suddenly, turned to see the reason, and beheld his Jordan change into a nightingale. Jordan could not move. He was fixed as a stone, and could neither weep nor speak, stir hand or foot. Now the sun went quiet down, and the gloomy night came. Fairy came forth, pale and sheer, with staring eyes, and a nose and chin almost met one another. She mumbled something to herself, seized the nightingale, and went away with it in hand. Poor Jordan saw Nightingale was gone, but what could he do? He could not speak, not move from the spot where he stood. The fairy came back, and suddenly Jordan found himself free. He fell on his knees before the fairy and pleaded with to give him back his dear Jordan, but she laughed at him, and he would never see her again, and then went on her way. Prayed, wept, he sorrowed, but all in vain. "Alas," he said, "what will become of me?" He could not go back to his own home, so he went to a nearby village, and employed himself in keeping sheep. Many a time did he walk round and round, as near to the hated castle as he dared go. All in vain. He heard and saw nothing of Jordan. Last, Jordan dreamed night that he found a beautiful purple flower, and that in the middle of it lay a costly pearl. And he dreamed that he plucked the flower and went with it sand into the castle. He dreamed that everything he touched was disenchanted, and there he found his Jordan. Morning, when he woke, he began to search over the dale for this pretty flower. 8 long days he sought for it in vain, but on the 9th day, early in the morning, a beautiful purple flower. In the middle of it was a large dewdrop as big as a costly pearl. Then he plucked the flower, traveled day and night, till he came again to the castle. He walked nearer than 100 paces to it, and yet he did not become fixed as before, but found that he could go quite close up door. Jordan was very glad indeed to see this. Then he touched the door with the flower, and it sprang open. He went into the court and listened, hearing many birds singing. Last he came to the chamber Fairy sat, with the 700 birds singing 700 cages. Fairy saw Jorindel. She was very angry, screamed with rage. She could not come within yards of him. Flower he held in his hand was his safeguard. He looked around the birds in the cages, but there were many, many nightingales, and how then could he find out which one was his Jorindel? While he was thinking, he saw the fairy had taken down and was making her way off through the door. After her touched the cage, Flower and Jorindel stood before him, threw her arms around his neck, looking as beautiful as ever, as beautiful as when they were together in the wood. He touched all the other birds' flowers so that they all took their old forms again, and he took Jorindel home, where they were married and lived happily together many years, and so did a good many other lads whose maidens have been forced to sing in the old fairies' cages by themselves much longer than they liked. Okay, so I hope you liked that story. It was definitely a different story, and definitely a story that not many people would listen to. It's definitely more of an unpopular story, but I hope you enjoyed it.